I don't say this as an instigator, okay? I say it as a concerned consumer of the music, genuinely. But I'm just saying, if I was TDE, there's no way I would allow Dreamville to get away with what they're getting away with right now. That's just me. I made a video similar to this subject a long time ago, like maybe 4, maybe even 5 years ago, where I talked about like the top 3, their influence, what they've done for music. And I think at some point in that video, I got into the conversation about who's leading the charge when it comes to music labels. And at the time, you know, it was very clearly TDE was leading the charge ahead of everyone. You know, they had Schoolboy Q, Absol had just come off the back of Do What Thou Wilt at the time of me making that video, I'm pretty sure. Like I said, Blank Face had just released. SZA was going to be coming out with Control the next year. Damn was about to come out from Kendrick the next year. It seemed as if they were just this unstoppable force. And I think 2018, the Black Panther soundtrack release, as well as J-Rock's record. During this time, KOD had released in 2018. And I was actually feeling like the Black Panther soundtrack was comparable to J. Cole's KOD record. Not to mention how bad Scorpion was from Drake. But I realized Drake is the label, you know what I'm saying? He's not really a person that you have to worry about in terms of artistic endeavors beyond him. Meaning that if Dreamville and TDE are going back to back, OVO is basically nowhere in sight because the entire OVO relevancy relies off the back of Drake and not the other artists that are signed. So I stopped including Drake in that conversation a very long time ago because he doesn't have the artist catalog to compete with TDE or Dreamville. But as the years have progressed, it seems as if TDE is losing some of that relevancy. And not everyone has the same star power as Kendrick Lamar, for instance. Kendrick can take a 5-6 year break if he wants to, come back, and he still gets the world talking. To the same extent, no, but he still had some eyes and a lot of attention. And regardless of how I felt about Mr. Morale, it's still one of the biggest albums to drop this year. But for those of you who didn't know, Kendrick Lamar announced that this would have been his final TDE album, meaning Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is Kendrick Lamar's most recent album, but it's also his departure from TDE. TDE losing one of their biggest stars, and I don't feel as if they are making great replacements. Not to say that all the people that are on the label aren't talented. I'm definitely not saying that, but you got Reason, you know what I'm saying? You got Ray Vaughn, which I feel like are lesser Kendrick Lamars to a strong degree. I mean, these people, not to say that they aren't making somewhat enjoyable music, but they're not even competing with the stuff that Kendrick used to drop back in Section 80 or before that. Meanwhile, I hear what Dreamville is putting out, and it sounds fantastic. Earth Gang came out with an incredible record this year. JID came out with an incredible record this year. I just listened to the Ari Lennox album on stream yesterday. That was amazing. The thing is, as well put together and as big of a movement I feel like Top Dog has been, I don't feel like there are enough healthy, interchangeable people that are coming in versus, you know, those that are leaving. And granted, there's only been one that's left, but that's a big chunk of everything that makes, you know, that label successful. Meanwhile, I'm hearing SZA isn't being allowed to drop records when she feels like it. Schoolboy Q's last single, Soccer Dad, was I don't know how long ago, like 6 months ago. Basically no follow-up. Absol released a record or a single not too long ago that was complete garbage. Zakari, who I love, is doing his best Weeknd impression on his most recent single with Isaiah Rashad. I mean, it's been so long since SZA has dropped anything. She's literally going back to Control and dropping unreleased B-side snippets that weren't included on the original just to give her fans some new material. I don't know what's going on over there that's preventing her from becoming the next star, which she very clearly should be. It just seems to be taking forever. No news of when we're going to get a new J-Rock single. Still don't know when the Sir album is coming out. The reason I failed at making that video 5 years ago was because my thought process going into the video was more so thinking that Kendrick Lamar had gathered people to be a part of a label, when in reality, everyone who he was working with on TDE was around the same level he was at his signing. He just happened to blow up the most. Versus J. Cole, who very easily could take a back seat to Dreamville right now, given what they're putting out, and let them thrive on their own. Granted, we wouldn't know who these people were without J. Cole's influence, but if he left the group right now and didn't drop any more music on the label, the label itself, I think, would still be able to work. It would still be able to do something. Even though J. Cole is the creator of Dreamville, I don't feel like he's the face of it. Like OVO for Drake, and unfortunately Top Dog for Kendrick Lamar. Whether they say anything about the label or not, I feel like their face is just represented. So when Kendrick leaves, I don't see the new face. I don't see the new star. I don't see the new person that's going to lead the charge. And granted, that doesn't always have to be the case. I think Yo Gotti is doing an amazing job with CMG, signing Glorilla, ESTG, 42 Doug, Moneybag Yo. The difference between TDE and the other labels that I'm mentioning is everyone else on the other labels are doing something like at the same time. I mean, it's hard to compare any label to Griselda, for instance, but they're always putting out work at the same time. They move as a unit. And one could argue that majority of the artists on TDE were picked well, which they were. I mean, everybody on TDE, I think, has had that hit, has had that moment, whether it be J-Rock, whether it be Schoolboy Q with Man of the Year. And I think he's had the most virality, he and SZA and Isaiah Rashad, outside of Kendrick Lamar. I think if you ask most people, they would be more interested to see what Kendrick Lamar is going to end up doing with PG Lang, as opposed to whatever TDE is going to attempt to do now that he's gone. And again, despite the talent and the potential that I see in some of the people that are being signed to TDE, I don't see it. I just don't see it. Ray Vaughn, clearly a talented rapper, I don't see him as anything more than a Kendrick copy in the beginning of his stages. Reason, who gave me an incredible record when he first came out, incredible first drop, in my opinion, has only regressed as the months and years have gone on. Who's going to be that person to take the baton? Who's going to be the new face? I don't think there will be one, personally. But I hope I'm proven wrong. I do. I hope I'm proven wrong, but I don't know if there is a good enough job of scouting that's being done to see who's got that new style that a label needs to attach itself to. I don't see TDE having that, scouting skill. Almost every single time there is a little bit of noise or some life that's breathed into one of the artists on TDE, the momentum is immediately slowed down because there's no further additions to the rollout. There's almost nothing. And that might partially be due to the fact that none of the artists have a date for release. I don't know. And I almost didn't have this opinion or this take, kind of assuming that TDE would still be able to thrive and survive if SZA was the main face of it instead of Kendrick Lamar, because she easily would have the most virality, being the one that I feel is most capable of going pop because her voice is so palatable in so many different spaces. But I sit back and I think, does anyone associate SZA with TDE to that strong of a degree? Does anyone in her fan base really rock with anything in TDE outside of SZA? I don't know. But I was just randomly thinking about that a couple days ago. I mentioned it on stream and I thought I'd make a video about it just to see where anyone else's head was at. Let me know how you feel about it in the comment section down below. Is TDE dead? Are they dying? Or is there still potential for a resurgence in the future?